Welcome back to This Week in Bevy. The major feature of the issue this week is the start of Bevy 0.15's release candidate process. You can find the current release candidate on docs.rs, and if you're unfamiliar with how you look for that, the release candidate won't be the default version. You will have to go up to this menu and check for one of the release candidate versions, whichever one that is. Currently, that's RC2. And if you're getting ahead of the game, you'll find up-to-date examples for 0.15 in the examples folder. I would probably start using the release 0.15.0 branch, which will have the examples that are related to the 0.15 release candidates. And note that there is a draft, this is an in-progress migration guide for early adopters of the release candidates, and it's available on the Bevy website. Do note that part of the process of the release candidate is writing this migration guide, so the earlier you get into this migration guide, the less information there'll be, and the migration guide should be full by the time there is a stable release. And if you want more immediate notifications for when release candidates go out, take on the Notify RC role in the Bevy Discord. And with the release candidate going out, feature PRs are a little bit lighter this week, as you would expect with the release candidate process running. And by the time you're watching this video, the Bevy Spooky Jam will have also already finished up. The theme for the jam was Eldritch, and it ran for about the last month. That said, there are interesting PRs going in. Meshlets in particular saw a number of PRs merged this week, including Meshlet builder improvements, new error projection, and other changes. This is really nice to see because it means they'll go out with the 0.15 release candidates and thus the 0.15 release itself. And either is an interesting crate that happens to be used in 16.036 for refactoring purposes. It's not only used in Bevy, but also Leptos, itertools, Rayon, SQLX, Polars, and more. If you're looking for a sum type that behaves a bit like a result, but doesn't have the success and failure meaning associated with the arms, like OK and error, either could be what you're looking for. Also notable is that the either crate implements a number of useful functions for working with this type. And when working with meshes, it's common to have a list of vertices and a list of indices. The indices indicate which vertices a triangle should be drawn with, and as of 16.014, the indices enum is a bit easier to work with, using a new push method. This is helpful because the indices enum otherwise requires matching on the U16 and U32 arms to get at the vec that you're trying to push this number into. And on the required component side of things, as of 16.072, Texture Atlas is no longer a component and has now become of UI images data. So before, where you would add Texture Atlas as a component, now Texture Atlas is part of the UI image data. And the new picking behavior in Bevy 0.15 for event listeners was originally implemented using observers. 16.105 reintroduces the ability to listen for picking events using Event Reader, which should ease some migrations from Bevy mod picking for the 0.15 cycle. And finally, as usual, we've got Alice's merge train, which is a maintainer level view into active PRs, both those that are merging and those that need work. And with that, it's time to get into the showcases, starting off with this dynamic power grid, which is a dynamic power grid supply indicator / overlay that merges shapes and can provide visual cues. Yellow means it has power supply, and orange means it's stranded, that is, it has no connection to the main grid. And this desktop emulating window manager is built using Bevy UI and the new Bevy picking crate. The goal of the project is to emulate an older style computer, something in the Windows XP 2000 or GNOME 2.x range. Up next, we've got a locomotion system that uses animation track blending. The upper body plays one animation while the lower body walks, runs, or idles. When a character enters the water, a third layer hides the legs. And water shaders are always really nice to see. This is a new water shader complete with waves in a hexagonal environment. Next up, we've got Markdown to Bevy UI. This is using pull-down CMark to process Markdown into Bevy UI nodes. This allows the rendering of Markdown documents in native Bevy. It's especially notable that the source code for this one is open source and linked to from the Discord thread. So you can see exactly how pull-down CMark and its AST, or non-AST, I guess, is used to produce Bevy nodes. And this shows off an adapter integration between Bevy and the Plotters crate, allowing updatable, but not interactive, graphs. And Bevy Chinua is a floating character controller, and this is a sneak peek at some unnamed functionality that looks a lot like clinging to walls in the way that you would need for wall jumps. And with the RC out, it's a bit of a shorter list of showcases this week, so we're already right into crates. This is Bevy libgdx atlas, which lets you load libgdx sprite atlas files as Bevy assets. You can make use of the GDX texture packer cross-platform tool to create sprite sheets like in this example. And then we've got Bevy Easy Portals, which is an implementation of visual portals that let you create mirrors and other cool effects. And finally, inspired by Unreal Engine Enhanced Input, Bevy Enhanced Input is a dynamic and contextual input mapping crate. The crate has a number of features for mapping game inputs to game actions, and if you're familiar with Unreal Engine's input mechanisms, seems like it would be pretty familiar, including the notable Bevy-specific feature that you can react to actions with observers. And for the devlogs this week, we've got 2 entries. This series of posts in MD book format covers the author's knowledge of how logging works and what they've found to work for them using Bevy. And finally, architecting a Rust game engine with Alice Cecile. Alice recorded a podcast with Developer Voices this week where she talks with the host about Bevy, the ECS, the project, and more. And that's it for this week. As always, we've got all of the merged pull requests this week up on the website. And if you're looking to get into contributing, we've got the pull requests that were opened and need some review, as well as the issues that were open this week. And that's it for this week. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your week.